I want you to think about the teams from the SEC that have made a New Year's Six bowl. Now, the quote-unquote New Year's Six became a thing back in 2014 when we got to college football playoffs, right? Before that, you had the 4 BCS bowl games. When the playoffs started, it went from 4 huge bowl games to 6 a year, right? And it's been commonly referred to as the New Year's Six. I want you to think about every SEC team that has made it to at least one New Year's Six bowl game. Yeah, of course, you have Alabama in the West that have made a ton. You've got Georgia in the East has made a ton. Florida has actually made 3 New Year's Six bowl games. Ole Miss has made 3 New Year's Six bowl games. Florida and Georgia are the only 2 teams in the East, I believe, to make it, right? Yeah, Florida and Georgia. In the West, you got, of course, Alabama. Ole Miss has made 3. You got LSU. Ole Miss, I mentioned Ole Miss has made 3. Auburn has made 1. Mississippi State actually made a New Year's Six game back in 2014. And Texas A&M made a New Year's Six game in the COVID year. Okay? So those are the teams in the SEC that have made it to at least one New Year's Six game. So who hasn't made it? Well, from the East, you've got Vandy, Mizzou, Tennessee, South Carolina. Who am I leaving out? Vandy, Mizzou, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky. Back to Kentucky in a minute. And in the West, who has not made a New Year's Six bowl game? Arkansas? Is that it? Texas A&M? Yes. Auburn? Yes. Alabama? Yes. LSU? Yes. Ole Miss? Yes. Mississippi State? Yes. Arkansas. So, who will be the next SEC team that has not made a New Year's Six bowl game that will make one? I think there's, if you want to break it down into divisions, the only option when you look at the SEC West is Arkansas. The rest of them have already made one. When you look at the SEC East, you're talking about Tennessee, South Carolina, Vandy, Mizzou, Kentucky. Kentucky or Arkansas or Tennessee. That's who it comes down to. Kentucky, Arkansas, or Tennessee. Now, a few different ways to look at this here. Arkansas plays in the SEC West. Generally speaking, in any random year, there are a few exceptions, but in most years or any general random year, you can assume that it's going to be tougher in the SEC West than it is in the East, so therefore maybe a little bit more difficult for Arkansas, right? Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee headed in the right direction under Josh Heupel. Kentucky, though, considered a more stable program right now, I think, than Tennessee. Tennessee did exceed expectations last year. There's no question about it. Josh Heupel's first year, they end up 7-5 in the regular season, 7-6 after a bowl loss to Purdue. Whereas Kentucky won, I think, 9 games or whatever it was. Who can make it to a New Year's Six game first out of Kentucky, Tennessee, or Arkansas? If you want to just look at the chances for 2022, and this is where it gets a little interesting. I think Tennessee's probably going to beat Kentucky this year. Okay? I think Kentucky's probably got a better chance of making it to a New Year's Six bowl game, though, than Tennessee. I think Kentucky just has an easier path. Kentucky doesn't have to play Alabama or LSU from the West. Tennessee's got to play both. And Kentucky's non-con schedule is actually easier. Tennessee's got to play on the road at Pitt, whereas Kentucky's only real significant non-con game is Louisville, which has been down for a few years, really since Lamar Jackson left. Look at Arkansas, on the other hand. They got to play South Carolina from the East. They got to play Bama. They got to play LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Auburn. And that's just a conference schedule. Out of conference, they got to play Cincinnati, BYU. You say what you want about Cincinnati and BYU, those 2 top 25 programs right now, okay? Very difficult schedule for Arkansas. So who's the best team this year between Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee? Now, we're going to see Kentucky and Tennessee play, so we'll get to figure that out. I do think Tennessee will beat Kentucky. I think Kentucky may end up having a better record, though, than Tennessee. Tennessee's got to play Alabama. Kentucky doesn't. So Kentucky's got some key home games. Kentucky, for example, Gets Georgia at home. If Kentucky were to somehow win that game, Tennessee's got to play in Athens. So who out of those three? Because doesn't specifically with Kentucky and Arkansas, it feels like that's the next step for them. Not that Kentucky and Arkansas fans don't have dreams of winning a conference championship one day or even making the playoffs or something like that. Everyone dreams. But it seems like the logical next step for Arkansas under Sam Pittman was going into his third year now. And Kentucky under Bob Stoops, which is he's been there a long time now. It seems like the logical next step for those two programs would be a New Year's Six Bowl. It just feels that way to me. Both teams were close last year, but a couple of wins away probably. Tennessee was probably 4 wins away from a New Year's Six game last year. It's very interesting to think about it because who do you think would win between Arkansas and Tennessee? Maybe Tennessee? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Kentucky, it's interesting. Kentucky and Arkansas. Don't Kentucky and Arkansas feel like the same program with different helmets on too? Big lines of scrimmage. Neither one of them with, really dynamic when it comes to throwing the ball. I would give a slight advantage to Arkansas when it comes to throwing the ball over Kentucky. Kentucky's just seems like they've been stuck in the mud in terms of their passing game for years. I like Will Levis, but come on, watch Kentucky play. They just have a hard time stretching the field and spreading things out. Arkansas doesn't have the most dynamic passing game in the world, but I think they're ahead of where Kentucky is as far as that goes. They both have great lines of scrimmage. They both love to run the ball, and they're both good at running the ball and play good defense. Tennessee, on the other hand, they just try to run as many plays as they can in a game, 100 or so. Tennessee knows that they're going to most likely lose more plays than they win. So their idea is let's just run a bunch of plays. That will equal more winning plays. And it worked last year. They scored a lot of points. Problem is they gave up a lot of points too, especially anytime they played a team with a heartbeat. Even Kentucky, they did beat Kentucky last year. It was 45-42. I mean, this is how Tennessee's got to win big games. 45-42, 45-40. If they're going to win one of these big games, that's the best they can hope for. I don't know. It's interesting to look at those three teams and compare and contrast them. It's Tennessee would beat both of those teams this year, but it feels like those other two programs have progressed at a steadier level. Am I crazy? It seems like Kentucky and Arkansas have progressed over the last 2, 3 to 4 years. Kentucky, particularly with the 4 or 5 year. Arkansas has really been a 2-year deal. But it seems like more of a steady upward progression for those two programs, whereas Tennessee has basically been a 5 to 7 win team for 15 years. Yes, they had the occasional year where they won 4 games. Yes, they had the occasional year where they won 8 games. I'm talking regular season here. But Tennessee's pretty much been a 5 to 7 win program, and that's what they were last year. Now, it was an improvement over the year before, but now we'll see what they do this year with a little bit of expectations. I think their offense will be good. Who's most likely to make a New Year's Six game first out of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas? You let me know down below.